Out of control in the heart of Detroit. 3 buildings are in flames. 1 firefighter has been killed. Several injured. Dozens of others struggling to get control of this fast-burning 5-alarmer. Firefighters were called to the scene about 3:15 this afternoon. An old warehouse owned by the Motor City Wiping Cloth Company was in flames on the Jeffries Service Drive in Hancock. That's just south of where the Jeffries and Ford freeways intersect. The fire raced like lightning through the old warehouse, jumping to the roof of the Continental Paper Company and a 3rd building nearby as fire department officials turned in extra alarms, calling for more and more help. Channel 7's Mike Hofeld was the first to report live from the scene of that fire. Mike is standing by with a complete account of everything that we do know so far. And Mike joins us now with this live-action camera report. Mike?
No leads, Bill. No suspects. No reason why. We do know a 24-year fire veteran, Detroit Fire Department veteran, is dead. He is 42 years old. We do have his identification, but at this point, we're not sure if his family has been notified. Why does something like this happen? Well, as one of the chiefs told me, maybe some sickie was behind this. Who knows? Here's what we do have at this time. I spoke to one of the firefighters that was on the 3rd floor with that veteran. He told me he apparently fell from the 3rd floor, plummeted, and his neck snapped. That's what happened. Why? Who knows? This was formerly the Motor City Wiping Cloth Company. The building is next to the Continental Paper Company. And, Bill, as we can tell now, the fire has definitely spread to Continental as well. You can see these were some of the scenes that our camera crews were able to get. The fire apparently started on the 3rd floor of this warehouse, has spread to Continental as well, and has also spread to Lawton Street. It has taken an east-west direction. The warehouse takes up a full city block. I spoke with one of the chiefs on the scene a short time ago to get his assessment of what happened.
What I understand, I guess when they first came in, they were up on the 3rd floor, and it blew him right out of the window.
It blew him out of the window?
That's what I've heard, yeah.
I thought, as we understood it, he was at the ladder and then tried to get down and lost his footing?
Well, that could be it, too, but from what we hear, either he was by a ladder and it blew him out of the window, but he came down from that 3rd floor anyhow.
You've seen enough of these things. Does this look like arson?
Yes.
Who in the world would do something like this?
That I can't answer. You know, if it could be just a prank by some sickie or by someone for some insurance money, I have no idea.
Bill, as you indicated, it happened at about 3:10. At this time, no leads, no suspects, no exact cause, but I have been able to touch base with several of the arson investigators here. They say it must be gasoline or something because it spread so rapidly. And now, as I indicated, it's taken an east-west direction. We have a pretty good breeze going, and it has spread all the way down to Lawton Street. That's the very latest, and of course the question is, why does something like this happen? A family suffering tonight, a 42-year-old, 24-year veteran of the force, dead. Bill?
Yeah, Mike, another question comes to mind, and I suspect it's on the minds of a lot of people who are watching now. If it's an old abandoned building that is not being used and is really of no value to anyone, why do the fire department officials risk the lives of men sending them up on the 3rd floors of these old places? Why not just stand back, use your long-distance stuff, and let the darn thing burn?
Continental was occupied, Bill. I've not been able to get a complete assessment of why, but obviously the fear was that this thing would spread. We have residents nearby. We have people that live close to this. And obviously those firefighters were concerned for their lives. They put their lives on the line, and obviously it cost one of their best.
Yeah, well, at the point that the fireman was killed, did they then all pull back for fear the walls were going to collapse and just let the thing burn?
Good point. I talked to the firefighter, Dennis Wilshire, who was on the 3rd floor. He told me there was an explosion. The fire apparently got out of control. It forced them back. They tried to get to the ladder, and apparently the veteran that was killed either lost his footing or was forced out. He plummeted down. Yes, they did pull back, but at the same time, they were concerned that this thing would spread, and they were right. As you saw on our videotape, the wall actually collapsed.
Yeah, well, it looks gutted and shelled now, and apparently it seems to be under control. It doesn't seem to be spreading, at least that's the way it looks from what we can see from behind you. Is it under control now?
Yes, Bill, definitely. The worst, obviously, is over. They're going to be here all night, though, because as you might imagine, this thing is red hot, and just as a precautionary measure, they're here. But there are still some flames, as you see behind me, so they're not going anywhere yet. But as you indicated, the worst is over.
Mike Hofeld, thank you very much. As Mike has indicated, a 24-year veteran of the Detroit Fire Department, 42 years old, was killed, apparently blown out of a window that was on the 3rd floor. He and 2 other firemen were inside at the time. He either was blown out of the window or he fell from a ladder. We also have a report that 4 other firemen, at least, are being treated at a hospital in the area. As you might expect, this major fire has caused serious traffic tie-ups in the area. Ramps from the Jeffries to Warren are shut down. Gawkers are slowing traffic on the freeway itself. That's to be expected. Probably a pretty good idea to stay off the Jeffries in the area near Warren, if, of course, you can avoid going down there. Any more, we'll get the information to you just as soon as it becomes available to us. Robbie?
Bill, we have more information on the firefighters who were injured. At this hour, the injury toll from the Wearhouse fire is climbing. Most of the injured have been taken to Detroit Receiving or Southwest Detroit General Hospitals. And Channel 7's Chris Hansen is at Southwest General, where he brings us the very latest on the condition of the injured in this live-action camera report. Chris?
Robbie, I'm at the hospital, but from our vantage point about a mile away from the fire, you can just see how big the fire is. Smoke still pouring up from a mile away. The damage to the building, well, it's not all that important because it was a vacant building, but the damage to the Detroit Fire Department, well, that's devastating tonight. We have 8 people injured, we understand so far. 1 firefighter has died. In fact, it was so devastating, you can see right there, a firefighter who was uninjured but who brought the firefighter who died here to the hospital is in anguish. It's a very difficult time. There hasn't been a firefighter killed in Detroit in many years. Just a few moments ago, we were able to talk with doctors from here at Southwest General Hospital and from Receiving Hospital. They give us the latest in the conditions.
He fell 3 stories and struck his head on the concrete.
And there apparently was an explosion?
Yes, there was for us we know an explosion associated with the fire.
What injuries did he suffer?
Massive head injuries and a broken neck.
So apparently it was a pretty serious explosion.
Yes.
We're currently treating 4 firefighters. They're all in serious condition. 2 of them have burns to the face and body. The other 2 have injuries sustained through falls.
Just a short while ago, the chief of the Detroit Fire Department, Anthony Amato, was here. It was obviously a busy day for him, and he was not able to give us a comment. We'll stand by and get you more information by the time the 6 o'clock show rolls around. Reporting live from Southwest Detroit Hospital, I'm Chris Hansen, Channel 7 Action News. Robbie?
Thank you, Chris. And as Chris mentioned, there was a 42-year-old firefighter who died. 8 have been injured. The last Detroit fireman to die in the line of duty was 21-year-old Curtis Randolph. The rookie firefighter died in 1978 in an arson blaze. Channel 7 News will continue to bring you the very latest details on the Wearhouse fire as they develop.
Firefighter. The fire, which began at about 3 o'clock this afternoon, is now finally being brought under control. The fire blazed in an old 3-story warehouse above the Jeffries Freeway near the Ford Freeway interchange. The building belongs to the Motor City Wiping Products Company. 1 unidentified firefighter was killed when he and 3 others either jumped or were blown off the 3rd floor by an explosion. That firefighter was pronounced dead on arrival at Southwest General Hospital. A total of 4 other firefighters were taken to Detroit Receiving Hospital. They're being treated for burns, smoke inhalation, and possibly for other injuries. News 4 will have further updates on this fire at 6.
Detroit, 1 firefighter is dead, 4 others seriously injured. Buildings late this afternoon just above the I-94, I-96 freeway interchange above Tiger Stadium. 1 firefighter has been killed, several others have been injured. The fire began in this abandoned warehouse you're looking at. There is a strong suspicion that it might have been arson. Good evening, everybody. I'm Bruce Kirk.
And I'm Sherry Margolis, in for
Everyone got out safely. And then back over this way was the brand name sales company, which was an abandoned warehouse as well. Now, it all started about 3 p.m. in that Motor City Wiping Cloth Company on the 3rd floor. And that's where a fireman was killed and 2 others were seriously injured when they jumped from the 3rd floor to escape from the fire. The Motor City Wiping Company, as I said. Now, that's an abandoned warehouse that was purchased 2 weeks ago by the city of Detroit, according to the firemen. Now, when Engine 10 first responded to the fire, they were first on the scene, the lieutenant from that company and 2 other firemen went to the 3rd floor where there were flames, according to an eyewitness and a fellow fireman.
Died and suddenly took off on him. By the time they got back to the window, the whole 3rd floor was going. Just by the time they got a ladder up to him.
So he had to jump?
He had to jump. And he landed right, he landed right next to the cars over there. Another guy hit one of the power lines and fell down. Another guy hit the ladder and went down. So there was about 4 guys that got hurt, I believe.
And then the lieutenant was killed.
Right.
We don't know the cause of the fire yet. Arson investigators are on the scene. I talked to one of them. And I said to him, usually in this type of case, when you've got an abandoned building, it's been abandoned for 4 years now, and suddenly there's a fire, isn't it usually arson? He said, yeah, a lot of times, but you can't be sure because it could have been derelicts who went up to the 3rd floor and set up a campfire. That might have caught on fire and started the whole thing. We might add that this is a terrible thing when firemen are killed. I talked to some members of Squad 4 who were here. They were personal friends with the men there, and they had to watch a fellow fireman die in front of their eyes. This is the second major fire we've had in just over a week, 8 days ago, in the same general vicinity. But this time, a fireman was killed. Reporting live from Southwest Detroit, T.Y. Chang, Channel 2 Eyewitness News.
T.Y., while you say the fire is still burning, does it look like the fire is going to spread to anywhere else, or is it pretty much contained in that area?
No, it's probably going to be contained. Nobody can predict what will happen, but right now it's centered in that one building, the Motor City Wiping Company, but it's also apparently destroyed much of the Continental Paper Supply Company.
Okay, thanks, T.Y. We'll come back to you if there's anything changing on that story.
Well, in addition to the firefighter who was killed, at least 4 others were injured battling the blaze. 3 are in serious shape. All the injured have been taken to Detroit Receiving Hospital.
And that's where Roseanne Serra is standing by live right now to bring us the latest from there. Roseanne?
Well, Bruce, 3 of the 4 firemen who were admitted here at Detroit Receiving are in temporarily serious condition. However, doctors say they are doing fine. The 4th fireman is doing so well that doctors expect him to be released later tonight. As you know, the situation wasn't as encouraging at Southwest Detroit Hospital, where one firefighter died before even making it to the emergency room.
4 were brought here to Detroit Receiving Hospital. 3 will be kept overnight, and 1 will be released later tonight. All of them suffered a combination of cuts, scrapes, burns, and smoke inhalation. Reporting live from Detroit Receiving Hospital, I'm Chris Hansen, Channel 7 Action News. Bill?
Chris, thank you for that report. This is the second major warehouse fire in Detroit this week. Last week, a school district warehouse was destroyed in a blaze. Investigators are looking into the carelessness by an employee as to the possible cause of that fire. Rich?
Well, there are... Right now, the fellow's injured because we have to notify the family, so there's no involvement here, okay?
Now, I have confirmed so far that 2 of the 4 firemen here at Detroit Receiving are Derek Rikowski and Robert English. The fireman who was killed is 43-year-old Paul Shemek, and he was a 24-year veteran of the department. The deputy chief said before leaving here that there was extreme heat and smoke, and we are very lucky that more firemen weren't injured. Bruce and Sherry?
Big tragedy. Thank you so much, Roseanne. It's always a tragedy, and they put their lives on the line every day.
Every day, they really do. Okay.
6 others are injured. It started shortly after 3 this afternoon at the abandoned Motor City Wiping Products Warehouse near the junction of Interstate 94 and I-96. 1 fireman was killed when an explosion threw him 3 stories to his death. But after the fire was declared under control, 3 firemen were trapped when a floor of the warehouse collapsed. 1 of them died, 2 others at Detroit Receiving Hospital. We'll have reports from the scene as well as from the hospital. The worst tragedy in the history of the Detroit Fire Department, details at 11.
We make Scotch-Guard fabric protector. It keeps ordinary spills from becoming extraordinary stains on virtually any fabric. Use Scotch-Guard fabric protector and let your cup run it over.
Worldwide sponsor, 1988 Olympic Games.
Take a late-night spin on Taxi, 11:30 weeknights on Channel 2.
Eyewitness News with Bruce Kirk, Kathy Adams, Chuck Gaedica, Fred McLeod, Joe Weaver's Perspective, and the Eyewitness News team.
What started as a trash fire call in an abandoned building near the Jeffries Freeway in Detroit ended up as a 5-alarm inferno, killing 3 firefighters. The blaze roared on for hours, and it turned out several firefighters were trapped inside, forcing a dangerous rescue. Good evening, everybody. It has been a rough afternoon and an evening for Detroit firefighters, a stubborn blaze, and the loss of co-workers.
Our T.Y. Chang brought us our first pictures of this fire more than 7 hours ago. T.Y. joins us now live just north of the fire site. How does it look now, T.Y.?
Kathy, this killer fire is still raging out of control. Take a look at it for yourself. If you go in there, you can see the smoke is still rising in plumes about 200 to 300 feet, and inside, the fire is still burning out of control. Now, it is not spreading, though. And the reason why it's burning out of control is because of what's inside, rags and paper and cleaning fluid. The smoke, as I said, is rising hundreds of feet, and the heat could be felt a block away at some point. Now, the fire is in 3 buildings, and apparently in 2 of them, Detroit firemen died. Just after 3, the fire began in an abandoned warehouse that was once the Motor City Wiping Cloth Company. When Engine Company 10 arrived first on the scene, Lieutenant Paul Shemek and firemen Derek Rikowski and Bob English went to the 3rd floor, where a small fire suddenly flashed into an inferno. They were forced to jump for their lives, according to an eyewitness and fellow fireman.
This place is loaded with bundles of rags and they got inside and suddenly took off on them. By the time they got back to the window, the whole third floor was gone. Just by the time they got a ladder up to him.
So he had to jump?
He had to jump. And he landed right right next to the cars over there. Another guy hit one of the power lines and fell down. Another guy hit the ladder and went down. So there was about 4 guys that got hurt, I believe.
And then the lieutenant was killed.
Right.
Suddenly at 6:15, firemen from Engine 26 were trapped in the adjacent Continental Paper Company building. Firemen frantically worked to chop down the secure doors to get to the 3 men trapped on the first floor under the collapsed roof.
Hey, John, we're going to have some more help back there. You get any more companies? We got this fire raging and we got these guys trapped.
Hey, we found one! Okay, they got one! Okay, the other guy's okay!
One fireman, Frank Dole, was found safe. He went after the other 2, apparently, Lieutenant David Law and Fireman McDonald. They were found buried up to their necks under 5 feet of rubble. It was too late for the 2. They were dead. Now, Fireman Frank Dole, if the accounts are correct, is a hero. He went in after his buddy after he saw the roof collapse to try and save them. Also, by 7:30, the firemen had to let that fire burn because they couldn't stop it. They just primarily tried to stop it from spreading. Now, the building the fire started in originally was purchased by the city 2 weeks ago, according to firemen, after being abandoned for 4 years. And the firemen claimed that it wasn't boarded up. We have not been able to confirm that. What we have been able to confirm is that the arson investigators believe it was definitely arson, and they have arrested 2 men, and they've turned them over to homicide. One of the men may have lived inside the building. That's the situation here. This killer fire is still burning out of control. Bruce and Kathy?
I'm sorry. T.Y., can you clarify for us, please? Are these suspects, or are they just being questioned at this hour?
Well, originally they were thought to be suspects, but as they're turned over to homicide, they're probably now considered suspects. It's happening even as we speak, Kathy.
Okay, T.Y., if we get anything new from down there, we'll come back to you at the scene of that fire in northwest Detroit. A real fire, real blaze.
Well, that fire, of course, was more than just a major spectacle. It also turned out to be a death trap for 3 Detroit firemen. It's the first time a Detroit firefighter has died in the line of duty since 1981. And according to Mayor Coleman Young tonight, it may be the worst tragedy ever involving Detroit firefighters. Joe Bell tells us more about today's victim.
3 helicopters kept their engines turning, ready to whisk trapped men to medical attention. There wasn't much they could do. The intense heat quickly crumbled the walls of the old warehouse. 47-year-old Paul Shimmick was the first to go, leaping 3 stories trying to escape the flames. The news came hard to friends he made in his 24 years in the department.
Well, if there was a job to do there, Paul Shimmick would be there doing it.
At all costs?
All the time. All the time. He was a fine man.
But Shimmick's death wasn't the last of the day. In the adjacent building, tons of rubble crushed firefighters David Lau and Larry McDonald, Jr. The 19-year-old McDonald has a father who's also in the department, and today was his birthday.
There's no diminishing the tragedy of those people who lost their lives, but there were other victims as well. Just a few hours ago, that was a viable workplace.
The Continental Paper Company was a family-owned janitorial supply business that's been here for years.
You give me your keys, as soon as you got it cleaned up, I'll move them out.
Employees aren't sure when they'll be reclaiming their cars, if they survived, and the son of the owner felt a premonition about the disaster.
Each summer, a building in the circle here has gone down. It was ready to go down sooner or later, but I kind of hoped it would have been later.
The company and workers were lucky. They were getting ready to move, but there's little consolation here. As a fire official put it in his words, that old warehouse was worth maybe a nickel. For that, we lost 3 lives. Joe Bell, Channel 2 Eyewitness News.
When you have as many firefighters on this blaze as Detroit did, and one report says there were at least 125 there, struggling to knock it down, you are bound to have some injuries. There were a number of firefighters taken to the hospital. That's Detroit Receiving Hospital, where our Roseanne Sarah has been monitoring all day long. Roseanne?
Well, Bruce, a total of 8 firefighters were taken here to Detroit Receiving Hospital, and as you heard, 2 of the 8 who were taken here have died. 1 was treated and released for smoke inhalation, leaving 5 here right now. And according to the physician, the senior physician at the emergency room, all 5 of them suffered smoke inhalation and some other serious injuries.
None of them
critically injured, I would at the moment. They didn't. None of them seem to be critical. 2 have gone upstairs already. 1 had a fracture in the elbow, and he's already been operated on, and he should be out of the operating room now.
Tonight, the emergency lobby of the hospital was filled with families of the victims as well as other firefighters. They watched as the bodies of their fellow firemen were brought in on stretchers one by one. So far, the known injured are Robert English, Derek Rochowski, Ronald Biner, and Robert Latka. Firefighter Frank Doyle, seen here in a navy blue T-shirt, was credited with attempting to save the 2 men who were trapped under a fallen roof. One of the attending physicians at the scene tells us what he saw.
The frustrating thing was that they were pinned in so deeply up and covered up, and the fact that they could see the people, that the fire was so close nearby, and they're trying to keep the fire back, and they could see the people, just that the physical freeing of them was probably the most frustrating thing for the people there. But
Dr. Kine also tells us the other 5 firefighters who are still here at the hospital will probably be released in 2 or 3 days, so their injuries aren't that serious. Bruce?
Yeah, okay, thank you, Roseanne. We have just gotten a word, too, in that the fire marshal is saying this is definitely arson tonight, so that has been confirmed by the fire marshal in Detroit. It is definitely arson. We don't know about those suspects or those people they've been...
On yesterday's massive warehouse fire that killed 3 firefighters.
Calling it one of the worst disasters ever to befall the Detroit Fire Department, the city's mayor, Coleman Young, says,
"It is a tragedy that men should have to lose their lives over an abandoned warehouse."
We don't need another firefighter dying for a needless building. That building was attached to another building, and I'm not going to second-guess their job, what they did there, but we do have to evaluate how we fight fires in Detroit in the 1980s and in the 1990s.
When firemen first arrived at the scene, the fire appeared to be small. The decision was to fight it from the inside. Fire officials say it's standard procedure, the best way to control a blaze and keep it from spreading to occupied dwellings. But the decision would prove to be fatal. There were explosions, the roof collapsed. The Detroit Fire Department, considered one of the best in the world, would mourn 3 comrades. 1 blown out a 3rd-floor window, 2 hopelessly buried in the rubble. At the scene, firemen would say our main concern is the safety of citizens first and the protection of their property. Fighting any fire, they say, is fraught with fast judgment calls and danger. The commander who sent those men inside the building, they say, was doing his job. You can't walk away from a burning building. What angers these firemen is the city's arson rate, considered by some experts to be the highest in the nation. This warehouse had been the scene of several small arson fires over the years that were quickly put out. Said one fireman, we assumed this one wouldn't be any different. Tragically, it was. Robert Vito, CNN, Detroit.
70 years in this city. How did it happen? Well, Fire Lieutenant Paul Shimmick was killed when he was blown out of a 3rd-story window on the old warehouse that was on fire. He died of severe head injuries and a broken neck. Shimmick was killed about 3:15 yesterday afternoon, but there was more danger ahead, more to come. Veteran firemen on the scene call it the worst fire they've ever seen, and it was. It then spread to the next building, the Continental Paper Company. The firemen were ordered in, but the roof then collapsed. 2 of the firefighters, 20-year-old Larry McDonald Jr. and Lieutenant David Lau, 48 years old, and a 32-year veteran of the force. They were buried under tons of bricks and debris. They were trapped, as one of their fellow men said, inside, buried up to their heads. He told us they didn't have a chance. And by the time their fellow firemen got to them, dug them out, they were gone. 3 hours after Lieutenant Shimmick was blown out of that 3rd-story window, the other 2 men died. More than 24 hours after it started, the fire at the Jeffrey Service Drive at Hancock is still smoldering, still being hosed down by men of the fire department. An abandoned warehouse owned by the city of Detroit ruined. So is the nearby Continental Paper Company. 3 firefighters are still hospitalized, 8 others are home from the hospital, and 2 men taken into custody by arson investigators last night are still being questioned by police, who now say they have not been ruled out as suspects in the torching of the building. But arson investigators have told Channel 7 News this fire was not set by somebody trying to keep warm. It was meant to destroy the warehouse. Channel 7's coverage of new developments in the fire story begins with Channel 7's Chris Hansen, who is following the official investigation. Chris is standing by at the scene of the fire, and he joins us now with this live-action camera report. Chris?
Bill, as you can see over my shoulder, the fire is all but out, but a wrecking crew has been brought in to knock down the walls before they fall down. Ironically, the city of Detroit knew this warehouse could be a problem, and it was going to do something about it. On December 4th, City Council agreed that this building should be demolished. Bids were let out, and the lowest bid was $324,000. It went to Metro Wrecking. The wrecking was supposed to start in 7 to 10 days. So in other words, if there's no fire, this building would have been torn down anyhow. That is, except for yesterday's tragedy. The vacant warehouse had already been targeted by the Detroit Fire Department as a possible fire or arson spot. Channel 7 News has learned at least 5 pre-planned fire inspections have been conducted here in the past several months. Those inspections usually take place in vacant buildings identified as hazards. So if they catch fire, the fire department has a plan. Apparently, the old warehouse contained tightly wrapped bundles of rags, which are flammable and can sometimes explode. The fire marshal's office has not pinpointed a cause, but workers at the next-door Continental Supply Company say vagrants stayed in the warehouse and would sometimes light fires to keep warm.
But they was in and out every day, grabbing all old rags and shirts and clothes, whatever they could get out of there. Salvage it. Yeah.
Was this kind of like, with that warehouse there, would you say that it was kind of like an accident waiting for a place to happen?
Yeah, it sure was. It should have been boarded up.
The fire didn't take long to spread to the supply company, which contained more flammable materials, including paper products and solvents. Are you surprised this hadn't happened before?
Yeah, really I am, because, the way people are, bums that were living in there. It's strange to me that it hadn't happened before.
Detroit police homicide investigators are still questioning this man who apparently stayed in the vacant building, and a second man taken into custody yesterday. No charges have been filed. 6 other people were also questioned today. Homicide detectives are working closely with arson investigators. Workers with the Metro Demolition Company started tearing down the charred walls about 3 o'clock this afternoon. Since the fire literally gutted the building, there was a danger of the walls collapsing. While there had been a number of fires in that building before, this one was obviously a different kind of fire, more serious and set in perhaps several locations, so it would be sure the entire building would be destroyed. In the meantime, arson and homicide investigators have been in the area putting up posters, wanting people to turn in information if they saw anything around the building about the time the fire started. If you have any information on anyone who may have started the fire, you can call the Arson Investigation Headquarters at 224-2040. That's 224-2040. Reporting live on the Near West Side, I'm Chris Hansen, Channel 7 Action News. Bill?
I think one thing that people at home have a difficult time comprehending when we use the word arson, and we are told by arson investigators it was purposely set and it was meant to destroy this building. What is the purpose in destroying an old building that nobody is using if it's owned by the city?
Well,
That's a tough one to figure out, isn't it?
It is a tough one to figure out, and that's maybe why arson investigators aren't saying too much at this point. But whoever did it had a reason, either because they are a pyromaniac who is just getting their jollies by setting a huge building on fire, thinking that perhaps they wouldn't hurt anyone, or maybe somebody had financial reward to gain. But we have no evidence of that.
Is there any scuttlebutt down there yet, Chris, that maybe the ultimate or the real target could have been the Continental Paper Company? Has that been discussed, or has anybody asked that question?
We asked that question earlier to some of the investigators on this scene, and because the fire actually started in the warehouse, they think it was the warehouse that was the target. It did spread quickly. Those bundles of rags are very combustible and can sometimes even explode, so it didn't take long for that fire to get over in the Continental Warehouse. But the Continental Warehouse has already found another location to operate temporarily. Their business is going fine. No indication that anyone would want to take them on as a target.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much. Of course, it was in the Continental Paper Company, the second building to catch fire, in which the 2 other firemen were killed when the roof caved in and the walls caved in on top of them. Detroit Mayor Coleman Young today issuing a statement today warning against second-guessing the tactics used by the Detroit Fire Department in fighting yesterday's inferno. Although the mayor says those tactics are going to be reviewed now, the mayor did express his condolences to the families of the firemen who were killed, adding, quote, "I share the shock of the entire city concerning the tragic deaths of these 3 heroic firefighters, and I join all Detroit citizens in thanking the entire fire department for its service and dedication in the face of this adversity." End of quote from Detroit Mayor Coleman Young. Robbie?